say, the community has to make decisions about compromises, and of course communist theory provides for this in its whole thinking about national planning, decisions about investment, directions of investment, and so forth. In an anarchist society, it would seem that you're not willing to provide for that amount of governmental superstructure that would be necessary to make the plans, make the investment decisions, to decide these kind of compromises between whether you give priority to what people want to consume or whether you give priority to the work people want to do.
I don't agree with that. I mean, it seems to me that anarchist, or for that matter, left Marxist structures based on systems of workers' councils and federation provide exactly the set of levels of decision-making at which decisions can be made about a national plan. Similarly, state socialist societies also provide a level of decision-making, let's say the nation, at which national plans can be produced. There's no difference in that respect. The difference has to do with the participation in those decisions and control over those decisions. The anarchist and left Marxist views like the Workers' Council's theory of, say, the council communists who were Marxists, left Marxists. In their views, those decisions are made by the informed working class through their assemblies and their direct representatives who live among them and work among them. In the state socialist systems, the national plan is made by a national bureaucracy which accumulates to itself all relevant information, makes decisions, offers them to the public, and occasionally, every few years, puts itself, comes before the public and says, you can pick me or you can pick him, but we're all part of this remote bureaucracy. These are the poles, these are the polar opposites within the socialist tradition.
In fact, there's a very considerable role for the state and possibly even for civil servants, for a bureaucracy, but it's the control over it that's different.
Well, see, I don't really believe that we need a separate bureaucracy to carry out governmental decisions.
You need various forms of expertise.
Yeah, but expertise is very much, let's take expertise with regard to economic planning. Okay, there's certainly in any complex industrial society, there should be a group of technicians whose task is to produce plans and to lay out the consequences of decisions, to show and explain to people who have to make the decisions that if you decide this, you're going to likely get this consequence, because that's what our linear programming model shows and so on. But the point is that those planning systems are themselves, well, they're industries, and they are simply part of they will have their workers' councils, and they will be part of the whole council system, and the distinction is that these planning systems do not make decisions. They produce plans in exactly the same way as automakers produce autos. The plans are then available for the workers' councils and council assemblies the same way that autos are available to ride in. Now, of course, what this does require is an informed and educated working class. But that's precisely what we are capable of achieving in advanced industrial societies.
And this is really basically the last question, which is how far does the success of libertarian socialism or anarchism as a way of life really depend on a fundamental change in the nature of man, both in his motivation, his altruism, and also in his knowledge and sophistication?
I think it not only depends on it, but in fact the whole purpose of libertarian socialism is that it will contribute to it. It will contribute to a spiritual transformation, precisely that kind of great transformation in the way humans conceive of themselves and their ability to act, to decide, to create, to produce, to inquire, precisely that spiritual transformation that social thinkers from the left Marxist tradition, from Luxemburg, say, on over through anarcho-syndicalists have always emphasized. So on the one hand, it requires that spiritual transformation. On the other hand, its purpose is to create institutions which will contribute to that transformation in the nature of work, the nature of creative activity, simply in social bonds among people. And through this interaction of creating institutions which permit new aspects of human nature to flourish, and then the building of still further libertarian institutions to which these liberated human beings can contribute, this is the evolution of socialism as I understand it.
And very finally, Professor Chomsky, what do you think of the chances of societies along these lines coming into being in the major industrial countries of the West, as we refer to them, in the next quarter of a century or so?
I don't think I'm wise enough or informed enough to make predictions, and I think that predictions probably reflect personality more than judgment generally about such poorly understood matters. But I think this much at least we can say. There are obvious tendencies in industrial capitalism towards concentration of power in narrow economic empires and in what is increasingly becoming a totalitarian state. These are tendencies that have been going on for a long time, and I don't see anything stopping them, really. I think those tendencies will continue. They're part of the stagnation and decline of capitalist institutions. Now, it seems to me that that development towards state totalitarianism and towards economic concentration, and of course they're linked, will continually lead to revulsion, to efforts at personal liberation, and to organizational efforts at social liberation. And they'll take all sorts of forms. I mean, throughout all of Europe, in fact, there are, in one form or another, there is a call for what's sometimes called worker participation or co-determination, or even sometimes worker control. Now, most of these efforts are minimal. I think that they're misleading and, in fact, may even undermine efforts for the working class to liberate itself. But in part, they're responsive to a strong intuition and understanding that coercion and oppression, whether by private economic power or by the state bureaucracy, is by no means a necessary feature of human life. And the more those concentrations of power and authority continue, the more we will see revulsion against them and efforts to organize to overthrow them. Sooner or later they'll succeed, I hope.
So it's going to be a time of turmoil, but perhaps also of, as you would see it, of creativity. Professor Chomsky, thank you very much.